hopefully we're good now. But yeah, so where were we? Attribute groups, right? So they're really the best way to refine audiences and journeys. A good thing about attribute groups is you create your sendable data extension, you have your set of fields, but you don't need to use these fields for your segmentation. As long as you've hooked up all your data extensions in an attribute group beforehand, you can use any data extension, really. You can see that I'm trying to filter off contacts, but I can use permissions, loyalty, transactions, any field, really, and it's drag and drop functionality, not a single line of code needed. Really useful, right? Except that it's kind of limited to journeys only, and that's a bit of a problem because you're not really meant to be using attribute groups for your entry-level journeys or your entry-level audience. It's late-stage refinement. Say I have a contact table with 1.5 million records, and I'm using an entry filter of attribute groups just to knock off, let's say, 250,000 records. Not that big of a number compared to the 1.5 million in there. That may cause a journey to just outright error, system error. In the best-case scenario, it'll go through, but it'll be really delayed. Journey Builder just isn't built to be able to handle these many records. And if you're going to be using contacts and you're going to be doing all your segmentation with attribute groups, you're going to have a lot of competition for just one data extension. And if that isn't causing errors already with the number of records you have, that competition certainly will. So really, you want to be grooming your audiences before you actually inject them into a journey. And one of the good ways to do that is with data filters. And they're great, right? They're drag and drop just like the attribute group filters, except that this time they create brand new data extensions. So you're not going to be having those competing resources. And you can also save them as a definition, which lets you use them in automations. No need to keep refreshing audience manually, just check it in there and you have a welcome campaign going in every day, always up to date. Little problem though, data filters. As you can see, I have my little contact fields there, but where are my permissions? Where are my loyalty fields? I can't just send emails to people that haven't opted in. So how do I get around that? And that's where data relationships come in, and they're actually really good. They are kind of attribute groups for data filters. You establish connections between different data extensions, and then you can essentially filter one data extension with data from other data extensions. They're a bit of a pain to set up. You do have to set them up one at a time, but once you do, you can pretty much see loyalty, permissions, transactions, all of these fields are showing up in my contact data extension when I'm setting up a data filter. It also works with non-standard DE, so if you have synchronized data extensions, Salesforce data extensions, even other filter data extensions that you created, it works out all good. And the best part is, it actually lets you go through multiple degrees of segmentation, which many people don't realize. You do have to set them up one by one, and in this case, say for example, products and contacts. They have no common fields, but if I set up contacts with transactions, which has a common field here, the contact ID, and then products with transactions, and the common field being the product ID, even though there is no direct relationship between contacts and products, Marketing Cloud is going to be able to identify that common link with transactions and show up all the fields handily and ready for you to use. So this is already going to cover a lot of most standard marketing campaigns, but it's not going to cover everything, and a lot of this is because there are certain limitations still. Unlike attribute groups, where you can kind of just set up your connections with data extensions directly, you do need to have at least one data extension to have a primary key when you're setting up the data relationship. And this is also a bit of a problem because you need all primary keys of at least one data extension to be mapped. So if you're doing something like contacts with a consent object, it's not that big of a problem because you only need to map that single primary key from contact. But if you're doing something like 3 primary keys to 5 primary keys, it can start to get a little bit weird. So you have to build your data extensions with this limitation in mind, which you wouldn't with just regular attribute groups. Also, data relationships are still just an enhancement to data filters. So at the end of the day, say you need to use latest send date. You can't really do that because that's a data view field, and you can't filter on the data view. And what if you need to do formulas or calculations like a 7-day average transaction count, for example, for a customer? You can't really do that. That's not a field in a data extension, so you can't really filter on that. And really one of the worst parts is filters are just shells. They are filters. They funnel down the data on a parent data extension to a child level. So you can't really add new fields. Say you're trying to send out an email and you have personalization they want to have there, like a field from loyalty, for example, that you want to bring in. You can't do that if you're filtering contact. And we don't want end users or CRM managers to go and start using AMP script to then retrieve those fields because we're trying to avoid coding, not make them have to code even more. One of the ways to get around this is this concept of the master data extension. What if you were to create this kind of monstrous data extension of every single field that you may need to use at a contact level? So you just might need to raise the requirements first because this is something that we'll need a little bit of SQL to set up. But once you get all of those requirements gathered, well, latest send date from the data view, no problem. How about some calculations? 7-day customer transaction count, 30-day average customer spend. Just check that all in. So long as you've captured the requirements and you have just at least one person that can set this up, you can then just use that with data filters and data relationships. It doesn't matter that it's at a contact level. Remember, data relationships can still get the product from transactions, so all of this still works. Unfortunately, you do need a little bit of maintenance, so if I need a campaign that's going out tomorrow and I need a field to be added today, well, that may be a ticket that goes in the backlog. So if you really want your end users to be fully self-serving, it might not be enough. Also, it can get a little bit out of hand depending on the number of fields that you add. So if you're setting up a master data extension, make sure that the fields you're adding are fields that you actually need. So if just a master data extension isn't enough, you really want to fully be able to self-serve as an end user. You want to be able to get all the power of SQL, but you still can't learn it. Well, why not use the AppExchange? I did say I'm 8 times certified, and there's one thing that I've learned is if you get a question or certification about the AppExchange, the answer is you use the AppExchange. And there's a reason for that, because you have so many different third-party providers that fill these special niches that Salesforce doesn't. And when it comes to drag and drop segmentation, you have Activation Studio and Deselect. Deselect actually being one of the sponsors of today's event. So Activation Studio is a little bit more focused on CDP, and they have some drag and drop segmentation as well. And Deselect, they really go down on that really advanced drag and drop segmentation. So a lot of different specialized tools like deduplication or different sorts of automations that you can run outside of Automation Studio. So just a quick look into Deselect, for example. One of the problems of filters, right, is they're always funneling data down. But with Deselect, it doesn't really matter. You can just do joins, right joins, left joins, unions, full outer joins, inclusive, exclusive, you name it, you can do that. If you need specific fields in a data extension for personalization, well, you can just drag and drop and they'll be available too. And the actual, filters themselves, right, the where criteria is pretty detailed. You might not even need a master data extension if you can just add a count or an average, sum, minimum, maximum, all different kinds of custom formulas that you can have there. If you're more technically inclined, you can even write the code yourself. And it seems really good, right? It's probably the best one out of the ones we've covered so far, but it's a paid solution. So you have to keep that in mind, right? You have to make sure that the cost that you're spending on the solution is actually worth the headache that you're saving from end users, and whether or not it's something that you can accomplish just with data filters, relationships, master data extensions, etc. So let's just kind of go over what we've covered, right? So attribute groups are really good if you want to segment mid-journey, and they really get you these targeted journeys, these targeted campaigns. But you want to be grooming your audiences beforehand, otherwise it can get out of hand and can cause platform errors. And how do you do that? Well, why not try using data filters and data relationships? No coding needed, drag and drop, really handy and covers most of your marketing campaign needs. But there will still be times where you may need to use a data view, or you may need to use a formula, in which case you can try and set up a master data extension for that and just get these calculations in. It does still need maintenance though, it does still need SQL, so if we want to have the power of SQL without actually having to learn how to code, then you can also use an AppExchange solution. Just be mindful that you will have to pay to get those to work. And that's kind of it from me. This is a lightning slot, so we only have 30 seconds, I guess, for a question. Let's take one really quickly.
No, I just want to say that 2 weeks ago we launched Deselect Segment free.
Sorry?
So we launched 2 weeks ago Deselect Segment free.
Okay. Oh, free. Oh. We have Deselect representatives right here, so hey, maybe I'm not chilling, but you're free to go for it. So hey. Yeah, so I'm sure you guys have a booth around here as well, right? Or something of the sort? Yeah, there we go, at the back of the room. Perfect segue into Deselect. I think we've gone over the 10 minutes here, but thank you for attending my humble talk, and hopefully you got something from it.
Hi, I'm Anthony from Deselect. And what is Deselect as a platform? It is essentially a way to enable marketers that use the Salesforce Marketing Cloud to get more out of their data. Deselect serves both non-technical marketers, for instance those who do not know how to write SQL queries, as well as technical marketers who are very well versed in the platform but who are looking for ways to be more efficient or who just want to enable their less technical colleagues. Deselect is an official Salesforce Marketing Cloud partner that offers the leading marketing data enablement platform on AppExchange. Fortune 500 leaders and mid-sized businesses leverage Deselect's intuitive solutions to help marketing teams create more powerful, segmented audiences, control marketing communication frequency, and achieve faster Marketing Cloud ROI without code or technical dependencies.